check out this important information.
Сегодня на лондонской бирже нефть подорожала на 3%.
Таргетирование инфляции как никогда
Необходимо доллар,
российской экономики.
газ, нефть, алмазы.
Мы эту болтовню выключим навсегда.
Рынок сам все отрегулирует.
Николай, ты куда?
Куда? На работу, в Кремль. Вот так. Поиграли в капитализм и хватит.
За Николая Харитонова, за КПРФ, за социализм.
Let's talk of the milestone in Russian life that's coming up soon on March 17th. Howdy everyone, my name is Konstantin. Welcome to Inside Russia, where usual Russia is explained by the unusual Russian. No propaganda, BS or lies here, only truth, common sense and logic, and some emotions too, because I am a human being after all. Let's talk elections today. Why do you think I played a campaign video of one of the candidates, Communist Nikolai Kharitonov? For two reasons. The reason number one I'll tell you right now, and reason number two at the end of the stream. Reason number one is that it was the only video, the only campaign information I could find. There are four candidates. Old communist Nikolai Kharitonov, and this is the guy. He is representing the Communist Party of Russian Federation. Another candidate is Vladislav Davankov, kind of liberal dude from a new party. No one really knows of the dude and of his party. The candidate number three, Leonid Slutsky, a big Russian populist who replaced Vladimir Zhirinovsky. And of course, the incumbent President Vladimir Putin. No picture needed of this guy. Well, imagine this. Four candidates. The race is on. We're at the final stage of this race, and this is the most important election of the following 6 years. A presidential election, for goodness sake. Russian media space must be exploding with all kinds of information. Well, that's what should be going on. In reality, we're seeing vacuum, complete vacuum. No candidates on TV, no candidates in the newspaper, no candidates anywhere, just vacuum. All right, you know what? Let's suppose that I simply haven't looked hard enough. Let's suppose that I haven't done a good job. Perhaps there's information everywhere and I, potential voter, simply wasn't looking for it in the right place. In this case, there's one place that's absolute must-have to look at if anyone wants to see the candidates, to see the real race, the information about candidates, their stands on things, you know, their angles and their ability to speak, their ability to, perform in front of a camera, all these things. That's the debates, of course. Well, let's look how Russian presidential debates look like. I kid you not. This is a screenshot of a presidential election race, national debates happening live on a Russian major national TV channel. No candidates showed up. Only guy standing in this picture is a representative of the communist Kharitonov. And that's not Kharitonov. That's just a some kind of guy this Kharitonov dude sent to represent him. And the guy is about nothing, okay? Take a good look in this picture. No one showed up. I bet you have not seen anything like this. I certainly haven't. The candidates and the experts do not consider the upcoming voting more seriously than a technical procedure. Again, the candidates themselves, all four of them, and the experts, political science experts, do not consider the upcoming voting in Russia more seriously than a technical procedure. A technical procedure. Among the loyalists, Valery Fedorov, the head of FTSIOM, that's a company tied with the state that does polling of Russians on a mass scale, put it bluntly. Speaking at the Club of Political Scientists in Voronezh not too long ago, he assessed the upcoming elections as an important ritual that is required only as necessary element of a normal political order. Again, an important ritual required only as a necessary element of a normal political order. Basically, they're having this ritual to give Russian political system a good face, so to speak. Or you can hardly give it a good face, I guess. To give it an adequate, passable face, something like that. Putin himself hardly thinks otherwise. Back on February 20th, at the forum called Strong Ideas for a New Time, for New Times, he called his address to the Federal Assembly on February 29th, that was going to happen 9 days later, on February 29th, the event that was going to take place in 2 weeks, again, that's very important, 2 weeks before the elections. He called it as setting tasks for at least next 6 years, the solutions of which we strive to achieve. Again, on February 20th, Vladimir Putin announces that he is going to make an address to the Federal Assembly 9 days later, on February 29th. And then he says that that Federal Assembly will be setting tasks and goals for the at least next 6 years, as if he is already one. Well, we all remember Dmitry Peskov saying that Russia has no democracy, but technical high-tech bureaucracy. That Vladimir Putin already won the election then, in August 2023, by a landslide victory of 80% of votes. We Russians would just have to wait and see until March 17th. The other three candidates, three Putin's official rivals, aren't fighting for victory. They recall the activities of the current president in their speeches praising him. And they do not hide that they only are trying to win the second place. They are not in for the major prize. They're not even trying. In the words of a political strategist working at the headquarters of one of Putin's competitors, these three candidates are competing with themselves. I want you to watch one more video. This one. And I'll translate. He goes, representative again of Nikolai Kharitonov, this old fellow in one of the provinces, is addressing and calling everyone, motivating everyone to call for his candidate. Vote for my candidate. He is the man of the people, from the people, by people, for the people. Nikolai Mikhailovich, and this is very important, check this out. He forgot the last name. says, I forgot the last name. And then someone from the audience hinting him, Kharitonov, and goes, oh yes, Nikolai Kharitonov. Again, check this one out. Have you seen anything like this before? I personally haven't. Forgot the last name. He goes, it's out of my head. I don't remember. And he's laughing himself. He goes, I'm very nervous. It doesn't look like he's nervous. He goes, this is it. No, watch it again, folks. This is gold, pure gold. Vote for my candidate. People from the men from the people. Forgot. Kharitonov is laughing himself. Oh my goodness. Well, I have not seen anything like this. Certainly, nothing even close to this. An important representative of a presidential nominee, okay, a runner-up, forgets his last name. Wow, just wow. So you understand, it's not the election, it's farce. Well, it's not just the election that is farce. Russia is one big farce now. Let's talk about Vladimir Putin. What's up with Putin? How is he handling his presidential campaign? The only real candidate of Russia, you know. Competition without competition. Or should I say competitor without competition? Before I proceed to discuss Vladimir Putin, I'm asking you to help me out a bit. First, hit the like button. Second, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so. Third, please make reposts of this in the social media accounts. And the most important, please leave a comment. Let me know what you think about what I'm saying, whether you like it, agree, disagree, don't like it. And if you if you have nothing to say, please leave a comment, couple lines of encouragement, couple comments. It'll be a pleasure for me to read. Your comments do wonders to YouTube. They help me to spread the message to many more people. Of course, you can always buy me a coffee or a tea at buymeacoffee.com or become a Patreon or a sponsor of the channel at patreon.com. Either way is greatly, fantastically appreciated. Thank you so much. I'm going to put the links down below. So it is clear already who already have won, who already won and will have won. So, sorry. It's clear who already won and who will have become the next president of Russia. We all know his name, 5 letters. But he must take some kind of steps. He must perform some kind of campaign. He must do some kind of actions. Otherwise, well, it would be bad. Not like other things are good, but he's got to do something, right? And he is taking steps. He does actions. He's doing actions. And this is what Putin does. He travels and he promises. For Vladimir Putin, this election is already the 5th time he is getting reelected as the president. The 5th time. 24 years. There was a 4-year break from 2008 to 2012. Other than that, and then he was still remained the Grey Cardinal of Russia, if you know what I mean, the big guy, behind Dmitry Medvedev pulling all the strings. But 24 years. 2 weeks before the end of current campaign, this campaign is looking more similar to what was happening in 2004. Let me remind you, right now, same as then, Putin announced his participation in the elections less than 100 days before the voting would take place. In 2023, it happened on December 8th at a meeting with so-called heroes of Russia, people who are killing Ukrainians in Ukraine, in the trenches, in the front lines. I guess the more Ukrainians you kill, the bigger hero of Russia you become. That's how it goes these days. In 2003, this announcement that he was going to run for the president happened on December 18th, so very close. The intensity of trips and the type of public events with the presence of the main candidate are also similar. In 2004, Putin made 11 big trips from moment he announced his participation in the campaign to the day of voting. And this time, by the end of February of 2024, there were already 12 big trips. Even travel geography coincides. As in 2004, Putin traveled to Chuvastia, Khabarovsk, and Archangel, but most importantly, St. Petersburg. He never fails to travel to St. Petersburg in the election campaign cycle. The president visited his hometown, St. Petersburg, before every elections and always comes there to visit the events related to the breaking of the siege of Leningrad during World War II. He did so this time too. In all Putin's campaigns, there are typical big events that are remembered either by his loud statements or by the mass circulation of information about them in Russian propaganda. The biggest events are usually so-called extended press conferences held every December, where basically Putin, like a CEO of a large corporation, comes out and makes a public speech where he talks about the previous year, what happened, and the results achieved, and the goals that are set for the following year. And another event, big event, could be Putin's direct telephone line with Russian people. During such direct line of 2003, Putin announced his participation and intention to run for the presidency one more time. And in 2011, he addressed the opposition that was then rallying, the protesting at the Bolotnaya Square. I talked about it so many times. So he called them, "Come to me, monkeys." In 2018, such event was the address to the Federal Assembly, where Putin showed his famous cartoon or cartoons with hypersonic weapons and a missile destroying the American state of Florida. We'll remember that. We did not forget, and many people did not forgive. So military, this same kind of announcement was made this time, and rhetoric is a bit different. And this is what it's about. Military thing was present in previous campaigns, but only from time to time, not all the time. For example, in 2012, before the annexation of Crimea, before the war, Putin said in plain text, "We need weapons," when he was meeting with the representatives of the military-industrial complex in the Far East. Speaking of current campaign, Putin has not made many militaristic speeches, believe it or not. Even at the very beginning of his official campaign, on December 8th, during the conversation with Putin about his nomination, Donetsk separatist and goon Artem Zhoga spoke not about victories on the fronts, but about restoring life to normal levels in the annexed territories. You see the difference? On one hand, there's war going on. On one hand, there are victories needed for Putin and his regime to somehow justify why he started the war, He needs change in the front lines desperately. At the same time, he barely speaks of the war in his speeches. For example, let's take his one of his last speeches, big event, his address to the Federal Assembly that just happened a few days ago. He barely mentioned Ukraine. He barely mentioned the war. He barely mentioned the trenches. He was talking about how he's going to make Russia so much better in the next 6 years. Well, I quote one of the team heads of Putin's teams in one of the Russia's provinces. We even completely froze the project of outdoor campaigning billboards with the faces of heroes of the special military operation. That's how they call the war. Instead, we are putting up pictures of simple, decent people without any references to Putin and the elections. For example, teachers, doctors, and other peaceful professions. God forbid we put military there. It's prohibited this time. We aren't allowed to do that. What we can do at maximum is to showcase volunteers, end quote. According to one of Putin's team politologists, political science experts, people's anxiety rating is now under 40%. Not 70% as in the days of mobilization in the late 2022, but people are still tense and most of all afraid of a second wave of mobilization that might be coming. That is why we tell Russian people about peaceful life, that everything is fine now. And it will be even better because Putin is solving problems. The core theme of today's campaign, if you call it campaign at all, I don't know how I can call it campaign really, whatever it is. Let me know in the comments how. Is there an English word for this thing that is happening? The only word I can find is farce. Now, perhaps there's a better word that, describes this whole thing. Campaign. So there are two major themes, core themes of today's farce, campaign farce. They are the past and the geopolitics. That's what the emphasis is made on. That's a sure thing. In 2024, one of the main events was Putin interview to American journalist / blogger Tucker Carlson, in which the president talked for 2 hours about his vision of historical foundations of Russia's conflict with Ukraine, and the West for that matter. And he presented Tucker Carlson with some historical letters. Sheer nonsense, in my point of view. Why he did that, no one really knows, but he just presented some letters, historical letters to Carlson as the evidence of him being right. It's crazy. So this interview was not analyzed and picked apart by the Russian experts, by Russian propaganda. Instead, it was praised. Instead, it was presented to Russian people as some kind of huge ideological victory. Okay, not definitely was a part of his presidential campaign. The only task is to avoid scandals in the provinces. And we really decided to bypass the topic of the war because the main request from voters now is for the war to end as soon as possible. Although it is clear that the majority is in favor of its end on the terms of Russia. And I'm quoting one of the top politologists who's working for Putin. I continue to quote, in general, the image of a man who wants to end the war is that was not started by that man, must be supported somehow. The best thing is not to talk about the war whatsoever, but about the struggle for sovereignty of our country and the new world order in which we are helping to build and which will not have any wars. I unquote one of the political experts helping Putin to win Russian people votes. That is a very harsh manipulation, and this guy spoke on condition of being anonymous. But that is such blunt he was being truthful, but this is horrible. You see, they know what they're doing. They exactly know what they exactly know what exactly they're doing. They're manipulating Russian folks. They're lying to them, and they're being honest about that. Vladimir Putin made lots of promises. So he's traveled so far. He's made 12 large, big trips all over Russia. Blah, blah, blah trips, just a picture on the TV. That's all in the news. But then he addressed the nation, the Federal Assembly, really, but it was addressing the nation, okay, on the last day of February. And then he made promises. He was making promises for over 2 hours. How he was going to improve Russia, fix Russia's problems, and make Russia so great. That's going to be the best country in the world by 2030. And a lot of Russians liked it. Somehow they don't ask questions. They don't think critical. I briefly counted how much money Vladimir Putin needs to fulfill all his promises during the Federal Assembly. Around 17 trillion rubles. Right now, Russia's savings account, and I'm talking about 17 additional trillions of rubles, okay? Right now, Russia's Fund for National Welfare, Russia's savings account, has about 1.9 to 2.2 trillions of rubles in liquid assets in Chinese yuan and gold. Gold cannot be sold easily, but hey, okay, it still has gold. And Russian budget is in deficit, in the red right now, because so much money is being spent to finance the war, and so little money coming in from the trade, the exports of oil and natural gas. So Russia is in big trouble economically, and there's no money. There's no money to continue supporting regular life in Russia. My bet that in a couple of months we will start seeing Russia changing fundamentally in terms of its economy. It's going to be landsliding, crashing, and then yet Vladimir Putin comes out and makes all kinds of promises. And that is a part of his presidential campaign as well. Another big event. All of that combined, all in all, this picture is a good illustration of what's happening. Again, I'll show it to you. No one is showing up. No real competitors. No one to fight with, and no one to fight to. Complete assurance of Putin's win. Even his press secretary says that he already won, so to speak. But you know what? It can't go on forever like this. This situation is like a spring. The best analogy I have is a spring. The harder and more intense you squeeze any spring, the harder it jumps back. And this is what's happening with Russia. Russia, not just the economy, but Russian people, Russian society, Russia as a country, it's being squeezed right now. We saw that squeezed in the USSR. The squeeze lasted for 70 years. But then, sooner or later, and it happened 70 years later, the spring jumped back in 1991. Right now we're seeing that they are squeezing the spring again. The current presidential election is another squeeze. Complete lack of competition, lack of anything really. So plain, so formal. No one taking this seriously. No one cares that there's complete lack of information. There's vacuum about every candidate. Candidates laughing. Their representatives laughing publicly. You see, that guy was laughing when he forgot the name of the candidate he was calling people to vote for. He's the one who sent him to represent. He wasn't laughing at himself. He wasn't laughing at anyone. He was laughing at people. He was laughing at people that, and probably thinking to himself, how can you be so stupid? You know, I even forget the name of the candidate I work for, last name, you know, and you really don't care. And this is basically what's happening in Russia right now. The elections will be manipulated. Putin will be elected. There's no question in my mind. But they should remember that there's always the last straw that breaks camel's back. Always. And straws keep on piling up. My bet soon we will start seeing the camel's back breaking. And this has been my message. Thank you so much for attention. There will be no live stream chat today due to some personal circumstances. Instead, I'm asking you to check out another video I made, Living After Russia, and it's called After Russia. The link is right here. Basically, it's a documentary about our lives after we left Russia. Thank you so much. Carthago delenda est.